Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating, incredibly detailed account of a vivid, exhausting nightmare. Now, this isn't just your standard spooky story. It's actually a profound look at how modern workplace burnout, or what's often referred to as working for a black company, literally manifests in our subconscious minds. By analyzing the surreal twists, the bizarre locations, and the relentless pursuers from this specific source text, we're going to decode the terrifying ways our brains process extreme stress.
So, have you ever had a dream where, no matter how fast you ran, you just couldn't escape? We've all been there, right? You wake up feeling completely drained, maybe even a little paranoid, like you've just lived a whole other agonizing lifetime when you were supposed to be getting some rest. Well, the source material we're examining today drops us straight into that exact psychological headspace. It's an exhausting, paranoia-inducing journey where the dreamer is constantly chased by exploitative bosses and bizarre medical staff, trusting absolutely no one.
All right, let's jump straight into Zone 1, Descent into the Black Company.
Okay, so our dreamer's descent begins deceptively normally. They're just crashing in a random condo room after a late night out with friends. But morning brings a seriously rude awakening. The room is suddenly filled with employees of a small company. Total panic sets in, then the dreamer bolts. Fleeing up the stairs of a narrow building, they find this stylish, empty, glass-walled office on the third floor. Thinking they're safe, they fall asleep again. But as you'll see in this nightmare, sleep is really just a trapdoor to a worse reality. They wake up on a floor divided right down the middle. Over on the right, there's this packed, suffocating makeup venture company filled with women, and on the left, two incredibly shady men. One has long hair and glasses, looking like he stepped straight out of a loan shark comic book. They run illegal scams and immediately trap the dreamer, forcing them to work off this imaginary trespassing debt.
As you might guess, the physical toll of this forced labor is brutal. The dreamer is denied sleep, working until their left hip and entire thigh are in just screaming agony. When they finally beg to go home, the answer is a flat no. So, they make a run for it. But the escape is basically a physical impossibility. They sprint down the stairs, but the stairs literally defy physics, pushing them back up like an escalator. With their pursuers closing in from above, the dreamer is forced into a terrifying choice, jumping off the stairs midway, completely worsening their agonizing leg pain, absolutely terrified that they're going to be forced to work until they die.
Moving right along, this brings us to Zone 2, the bizarre hospital experience.
Somehow, the dreamer manages to drag themselves into this massive, surreal hospital plaza that's just filled with the walking wounded. A deeply exhausted Chinese man sits in front of the dreamer and eventually just leans back and falls asleep right on their chest. Then, out of nowhere, the dreamer's own father briefly appears. But instead of offering any real protection, the father, who is also in pain by the way, just hands over some money and abandons them. The sense of isolation here is palpable. But notice the complete loss of agency that happens next. When the roaming doctor, this large, tanned, bald man, asks what hurts, dream logic violently overrides the truth. Despite the agonizing pain in their left hip and thigh, the dreamer inexplicably lies. They claim their right wrist hurts because a company boss hit them. The doctor sympathizes, gives an injection in completely the wrong spots, and yet, absurdly, the pain actually starts to fade.
Feeling a bit better, the dreamer tries to leave, opening a door they think is the exit, but instead they stumble into a back room. Here they find that tan doctor and his female partner just drowning in paperwork. They look absolutely soul-crushingly exhausted. In a brilliant psychological twist, the dreamer's suspicion of this bizarre medical setup completely melts into profound sympathy. Even in a nightmare about being overworked, the dreamer actually stops to feel pity for the heavy workload of others. It really highlights how deeply ingrained the fear of exhaustion is in all of us.
Okay, we have to take a quick breath here because the dream throws in a jarringly funny, utterly absurd cameo. Suddenly, the dreamer is back on the third floor, where they run into the real-life comedian Tamabukuro Sujitaro. He's completely drunk and holding a vacuum-sealed bag of raw salmon in white sauce. He's literally eating it with his bare hands, taking one bite and throwing the rest away, casually mentioning his wife in the back is going to cook the rest of it. When the dreamer warns him about eating raw fish, he completely brushes it off. But beautifully, as the dreamer vents about their horrific labor experience, this drunk, salmon-eating comedian becomes the only person who genuinely listens and sympathizes.
Okay, plunging back into the terror now. Zone 3, the endless labyrinth and escape.
Of course, the relief doesn't last. The dreamer finds themselves back in that third-floor office, but now it's being actively demolished by contractors.
The two friends from earlier attempt a physical rescue, brawling with the loan sharks, but they ultimately flee, leaving the shady men with a deadly, burning grudge against our isolated dreamer. In a desperate move, the dreamer threatens to leak smartphone footage to the authorities, but the pursuer smirks and delivers a massive psychological blow. He says, "We have your resume. It has your home address. Don't think you can run forever." Just let that sink in for a second. The dreamer's own resume, a symbol of seeking employment and providing for yourself, is weaponized into the ultimate tool of terror. There is literally nowhere to hide when your employer owns your very identity.
From here, the pacing becomes utterly frantic. The dreamer bolts, opening doors that now act like a magical broken maze. They open a door and are instantly transported to a school gymnasium, but it's filled with adults practicing some kind of concert or speech on stage. The dreamer is forced into the line to go on stage, but at the absolute last second, they break away, sprinting in sheer panic straight through the heavy stage curtains.
Bursting through the curtain, the dreamer drops directly into a material storage room filled with metal racks and bookshelves. But before they can even catch their breath, the room is flooded by a massive crowd. It's a company info session for the rapidly expanding hospital they were just at. The room is suddenly packed with women in suits, female doctors in white coats, and medical professionals. Terrified of being found and injected again, the dreamer dives under the absolute lowest bookshelf they can find.
And this brings us to a total masterclass in sensory terror. You see, the dream grounds its surrealness in hyper-specific, terrifying tactile details. While hiding under the shelf, a woman's feet stop right in front of the dreamer. She bends down and blindly sniffs the air. Kunkun, a silent animalistic threat that she absolutely knows they're there. Later, as the dreamer tries to sneak out through a new storage area, they accidentally brush against a wrapped cylinder. The nylon bag makes a loud, crisp rustle. Shaka shaka. That single sound completely gives away their position to a smirking employee guarding the exit.
Which finally leads us to Zone 4, the true nature of stress.
This absolute lack of safety pushes the dreamer right to the brink. When a smirking employee turns to report them, the dreamer makes a horrific decision, agonizingly choking the man for 3 whole minutes until he stops moving. With the guard down, the dreamer sprints for the heavy double doors. The exit is right there, but as they burst through, no way. They loop right back into a waiting room behind the school gym. The choked man instantly regains consciousness and screams, "They're over here!" After everything, the pain, the hospital, the labyrinth, the desperate violence, the dreamer is finally captured by the venture company employees. They're dragged violently into an office, condemned to work forever, screaming for help at the top of their lungs as they finally wake up.
And this brilliantly illustrates our conclusion for today. You see, this vivid, exhausting narrative isn't just a random assortment of scary images. It's a profound reflection of the modern worker's psyche. It shows us exactly how the stress of exploitative work environments, lack of agency, and sheer exhaustion seep directly into our subconscious. We never truly feel safe from the grind. Everyone becomes a potential spy, and every door just leads to another task. So I want to leave you with this to think about. When our minds simply cannot clock out, do our own dreams become the ultimate black company? Thank you so much for exploring this remarkable source material with me today on this explainer.